start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Conspiracies, legends, and myths have consumed curious minds for decades. From the outlandish to the plausible, and even the provable. The Bermuda Triangle, the lost city of Atlantis, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Illuminati, the moon landing hoax, the Roswell incident, the paranormal, the Kennedy assassination, Area 51, alien abductions, and the truth about UFOs remain the most popular and debated in today's culture. While many of these topics remain unproven, new light has been shed on a few over recent years, bringing us closer to startling truths, such as the USS Nimitz account of supersonic UFOs captured on video, released to the public in April of 2020. For centuries, the giant has existed in folklore all over the world and are even referenced in the Bible as the Nephilim. In America, the Iroquois, the Osage, the Tuscaroras, the Hurons, the Omahas, and many other North American Indians all spoke of giant men who once lived and roamed in the territories of their forefathers. Dismissed as legends, myths at first, anthropologists, scientists, and historians have been coming to unified conclusions that based on tangible evidence, a race of ancient giants did roam the earth long ago. And more recent theories speculate the truth of their origin. Around the turn of the 19th century, there were hundreds of reports from reputable sources of giant skeletons unearthed from ancient burial grounds from across America. The mounds were built with massive stones and were present long before colonists from Europe crossed over. Jim Vieira and his brother uncovered old reports in New England of giant skeletons unearthed from these mounds, often with 2 rows of teeth and jaws that could fit over the head of a normal-sized human. The skeletons ranged in length from 7 to 12 feet tall. Jim and Bill Vieira have made it their mission to explore the mystery behind these mounds and others, where there is documentation of unearthed skeletons, often of gigantic proportions. Much like the early explorers, Jim and his team investigate the ancient sites of New England, gathering evidence and study of pre-colonial locations. They have discovered many sites not on any map and contributed to the knowledge of these historical monuments.
The story of giants is interwoven into myth and religion and essentially the landscape of different countries around the world, like stone structures like cairns and all kinds of megalithic sites have legends of giants. Religious documents talk about giants as a historical fact. You have secret society literature like the Rosicrucians and Freemasons and Theosophists who firmly believe it's a historical fact. You have the Sumerian Anunnaki, and then you have Jack and the Beanstalk and giants like Paul Bunyan interwoven into the collective unconscious.
As well as Jim's team, other noted writers and scholars on the subjects of giants have studied the giants of America, including Andrew Collins, author of Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, and the Cygnus Key, the Denisovan Legacy.
Well, in the 19th century, it became obvious that many Adena period mounds, as well as those from other periods and other cemeteries and burial sites, contained the skeletons of human beings that were of quite exceptional size, generally in the range of between 7 and 8 feet. And this was something which you could have put down to gigantism if there were just a few of them, but there were hundreds, if not thousands of them.
When you talk about a giant, it's not only controversial, it just seems totally improbable if you were to talk to an anthropologist or an archaeologist.
It seems to be the case that the giant individuals can be seen to be 7 feet and upwards. I mean, quite clearly, there's those that go from, let's say, 6 feet to 7 feet. But if we ignore those as just exceptionally sized individuals with no extra special meaning, it starts to become interesting when you find that a large number of these giant remains are very clearly of individuals of 7 feet and upwards. And these we find all over North America, from California to West Virginia to the area of the Great Lakes region. So it's a pretty universal discovery of these remains, and therefore we're looking at a human population that must have existed in the past right the way across the entire North American continent.
We've uncovered probably over 1,500 accounts from a series of documents, scientific literature, academic journals, town and county histories, newspaper accounts of 7, 8, 9, and even taller skeletons that were just measured like a stationary object, specific measurements of femur bones, skull circumference by scientists of the time. In fact, the same finds occurred in the 60s and 70s by university-trained anthropologists as well, finding over 7-foot skeletons in Kentucky, at the Dover Mound, at the Cresap Mound in West Virginia, at DeSoto's Cave in 1963 by a University of Alabama archaeologist, a jawbone fitting over the face, an over 7-foot skeleton. One of the stories told by Native people and Native wisdom keepers is that there was a royal class of Native Americans that were encountered by all the early explorers, from South and North America, John Smith, DeSoto, Coronado, Magellan. They all encountered massive giant Native chiefs. And when the burial mounds were opened in the United States, they found enormous royal burials of 7 and 8 foot tall skeletons. And the Adena people, one of the oldest mound building cultures in the eastern half of the United States, the men and women were enormous and they elongated their skulls. And there was this royal class of these like benevolent temple priests, if you will, that were the spiritual leaders of Native people all around the country.
There are not just giant remains found in North America, but also many different legends and folklore relating to the presence of these giants. Many of them were said to have been red-haired. Many of them were said to have lived in remote mountain-like environments. Many of them were thought to have supernatural powers. And it was even the case that some were said to be cannibals.
Yeah, at this point we have almost 1,500 individual accounts in scientific journals and newspapers of these giant skeletons. And a giant skeleton is basically anything over 7 feet. It ranges all the way up to the 11s. The first one we found had the anomaly of double rows of teeth. We don't know what that means. They said it was head as big as a peck basket, pretty big dome, 8 foot tall, washed out of a bank. I would say there's probably close to 100 out of those 1,500 reference double rows of teeth.
The amount of 7-foot and taller skeletons that were unearthed is well beyond what is considered normal. And they had many strange anatomic anomalies like massive jaw bones, massive bone structure, sometimes double rows of teeth, sometimes 6 fingers and toes. Like in the Bible, the giant of Gath in Samuel 21:20 has 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Some cases where the giants very specifically do have 2 sets of teeth, both in the upper and the lower jaws. It could possibly be either a genetic trait of the giants or some kind of mutation based upon their hybridization, perhaps from one type of archaic human to that associated with human beings. In other words, this is a genetic disorder that's caused through the mutations of the hybrids.
One of the major mysteries about the bones of the ancient giants is the fact that many have double row of teeth and 6 fingers and toes. The evidence for this is in petroglyphs, as well as the skeletons dug up throughout North America and the world. This indicates the possibility of another race that predated the indigenous First Nations tribes, perhaps a race that lived before the Ice Age or floods.
Double rows of teeth is an anatomic anomaly that was mentioned all around the country in association with these giant finds. In fact, the first account I ran into was in the town history of Deerfield, Massachusetts. An 8-foot skeleton with double rows of teeth was found and examined by Stephen Williams, a local anatomist, and recorded by George Sheldon. But you find that all around the country, buried in these obscure texts.
The various cultures collectively termed mound builders were thought to be inhabitants of North America who during a 5,000-year period constructed various styles of earth and mounds for religious, ceremonial, burial, and elite residential purposes. These included the pre-Columbian cultures of the Archaic period, Woodland period, and Mississippian period dating from roughly 3500 BC. The construction of the Watson Break to the 16th century and living in regions of the Great Lakes, the Ohio River Valley, and the Mississippi River Valley and its tributary waters. In America, in the 1800s, the mound builder myth was created to justify the displacement of native people and the taking of their lands. The theory was that another more ancient race built the mounds of ancient America, and the natives killed them off. What the natives actually said in their oral traditions, recorded by ethnologists and missionaries, was that the tall ones showed up from a lost land after a great flood and joined with them and guided them in mound construction. These beings were described as giant-sized and possessing supernatural abilities and anatomic anomalies such as elongated skulls and 6 fingers and toes. This same story is found in Samaria, Peru, Mexico, China, the British Isles, and other locations around the world. These tall ones were considered benevolent culture bringers who interbred with natives and created a royal class of shamans and leaders, and this royal class is who was buried in the mounds, where skeletons of great height were reported, often found with copper crowns and precious artifacts like pearls.
So you have this ancient notion of a parent race, if you will, that was polydactylous and giant, and is portrayed not just in myth and legend in documented Sumerian and biblical texts, but also in the iconography of the statues itself around the world, the most ancient ones. Beings with 6 fingers and 6 toes who were often giant, who may have interbred with humans. Native Americans have ideas of an ancient war between 6-fingered and 5-fingered tribes, and there are in fact petroglyphs in Baja California that portray that, as well as the entire world is littered with giant hands and feet in rock art. Easter Island, Hawaii, all around the Pacific, Australia, all around ancient America, you have this staring in our face, but it's just viewed as kind of a just a mythological idea, but I say there's something to it.
The Denisovan are an extinct species or subspecies of archaic humans in the genus Homo. In March 2012, scientists announced the discovery of a finger bone fragment of a juvenile female who lived about 41,000 years ago, found in the Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains in Siberia, a cave that was also inhabited by Neanderthals and modern humans. The mitochondrial DNA of the finger bone showed it to be genetically distinct from the Neanderthals and modern humans. A 2013 comparison with the genome of another Neanderthal from the Denisova Cave revealed local interbreeding with local Neanderthal DNA, representing 17% of the Denisovan genome, and evidence of interbreeding with as yet unidentified ancient human lineage. Denisovans and Neanderthals split from Homo sapiens around 744,000 years ago and diverged from each other about 20,000 years later.
As soon as we realised the significance of the Denisovans back in 2012, or shortly after the release of news of the genome, it became obvious that the teeth of the Denisovans were of huge size. I mean, in fact, so large that they were initially mistaken for those of a cave bear.
What occurred there was a series of teeth were found, so large they thought they were the teeth of a cave bear. They took them to the Max Planck Institute to get them sequenced, and it was figured out that they not only are our human cousin, but they interbred with humans and Neanderthals, once thought to be an anthropological heresy. So this is a complete, game changer. And there are other osteological evidence that's been found, like a huge skull fragment, that's indicating we have a giant human ancestor who looks like they might have been part of the giant story who interbred with humans.
I believe that the giant skeletons of North America are the descendants of human Denisovan or human Denisovan, possibly even Neanderthal hybrids that reached the Americas at a very early date, possibly 20, 30,000 years ago, and survived in the continent right the way through to the Adena period during the first millennia BC, and possibly onwards through until the time of first contact, the beginning of the historical period in the 15th, 16th century.
That's another layer of this mystery too, is what was going on in ancient America. It certainly doesn't look like a purely hunter-gatherer civilization, mobile, just following the buffalo around. That, especially around Ohio, there are incredible stone structures everywhere, and there was a very sophisticated culture. And now with the discovery of Denisovans, it looks like they might have come island hopping through California, and now it's becoming accepted that there might have been interbreeding between Denisovans, Neanderthals, and humans. So how much of that took place in ancient America?
Early explorers and archaeologists often found giants when digging for artifacts in the Americas. Paxton Hayes, an archaeologist, made several astonishing discoveries in Sonora, Mexico, including skeletons 7.5 feet tall, as well as giant skulls. Many of these artifacts were destroyed. However, there could still remain ancient evidence of giants in the area.
There's a couple sites that have really stood out to us. One is the Lost City of Giants of Sonora, Mexico. Now, in 1930, the explorer Paxton Hayes found the Lost City of Giants, and he took pictures of it. He found 34 mummies in between 7 and 8 foot tall. He was greeted at the White House, where he delivered snakes to the zoo in Washington and met with Smithsonian scientists about his finds. But his ideas were not accepted, and he lost his funding. But he continued to research this for 20 years. And we interviewed his son, Carlos Hayes, and we have friends in the Chihuahua area near the Sonora, Mexico region, and we are trying to locate this Lost City of Giants.
Almost 100 of these accounts now reference the bones being sent to the Smithsonian. So the Smithsonian claims that the largest skeleton is, I think, 6'3" or something like that. So what is the mystery of these bones supposedly being sent to the Smithsonian? Now, all these accounts, they're in like your local newspaper. They talk about the town was abuzz, and the town doctor measured the skeleton, and it sat in the assessor's office, and everybody in town went to look at it. How could you write that story in your local newspaper? What would people say about that? How could this not be, there be truth to this?
In fact, there is quite a violent reaction amongst the academics when you talk about giants. You're ridiculed, you're denigrated, and marginalized, and it's rather infantile. There's a juvenile taboo associated with this for no good reason.
Throughout the search for physical evidence still available today, the involvement of the Smithsonian Institute and actions they have taken in the past always emerges. One theory is the Smithsonian deliberately disposed of many artifacts that would help in the discovery of giants.
It has often been suggested that the Smithsonian has been hiding evidence of giant remains. And this is a very valid point that needs to be addressed.
I'm not making up any theories. I'm just showing, a vast amount of evidence and stationary measurements of skeletons. Make of it what you want, but we just feel like it's worthy of further investigation.
In the 19th century, there were hundreds and hundreds of accounts of giant remains being found. And these appeared in newspapers, and they appeared also in records of excavations at sites. And every single one made it clear that the remains went back to the Smithsonian, for study. And yet they would seem to have gone into some kind of black hole there. And yet these accounts, they're in, absolutely credible scholarly journals and books. So they must have had them. They must have been there somewhere, even if they weren't on display. They must have been in their back room somewhere, in some box being forgotten about. The problem comes with the fact that I don't think that there was any kind of conspiracy to hide this evidence. I just think that it was believed that they were of no relevance, and they were also forgotten about until the late 1980s, the beginning of the 1990s, with the NAGPRA law. And the NAGPRA law basically said that any remains that were being kept within state or federal museums or institutions had to be repatriated to the Native American tribe that was nearest to where those remains were found in the first place. And this didn't matter whether they were giants or normal-sized people, or whether they were 10,000 years old or 500 years old. All of them had to be removed and repatriated. So the problem is that if you went to the Smithsonian today and you said to them, have you any giant remains? Clearly the answer would be no. And if you went to any museum, the same answer would be given to you. No, none around. And in fact, there isn't any giant remains that can be tested anywhere in North America, certainly not going through orthodox academic channels. And I know for a fact that there are various archaeologists out there that are just dying to get their hands on a giant bone or a giant tooth that they can extract the DNA, possibly do the genome, and to find out who these individuals were, whether they are linked with the Denisovans or the Neanderthals, or whether they are just, oversized human beings, Homo sapiens, or perhaps even that they relate to a previously unknown archaic form of human that survived through to the historic period. So until this happens, we cannot go anywhere with the DNA. We can only but speculate on who they are.
The Smithsonian comes up a lot when you talk about giants. There's a lot of controversial ideas. They have the secret vault of skeletons, giant skeletons, and all these types of things, and they've covered up evidence. And I would just say to that, I don't trust institutions and corporations as far as I could throw them, but when you have independent researchers working all around the country, there's no vast conspiracy there, but I believe agenda and the human ego is the conspiracy, where these ideas are not accepted and they're not looked at through any favorable light.
The Smithsonian was out buying these skeletons. There's one, the San Diego giant, the Smithsonian in the late 1800s paid $500 for. I don't know what that is in in present day money, but it's a lot of money. And it turned out to be a hoax, but I'd love to know what they did with it. But that's just indicative of, they seem to have an interest in this because they paid for this known giant skeleton.
The Eastern Mounds Division in the late 1800s was led by the Smithsonian, and their own scientists unearthed numerous skeletons, well over 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall, giant skulls, double rows of teeth, jawbones that fit over the face. It's all right there on the record.
There could be some slight mismeasurement, but everybody knows what a skeleton looks like. When it's laid out on a table, you can't turn a 5'4" skeleton into an 8 foot, 9 foot giant.
The Smithsonian was shipped enormous skeletons, over 8 foot tall, over 9 foot tall, And then they claim that the largest one they have is a Sioux Native American that's 6'3" with acromegaly, a disease condition. So there's no, reference to their own scientists unearthing 7-foot and 8-foot tall skeletons. So make of it what you want. Once again, I don't want to get in conspiracy talk, but I don't trust institutions and corporations at all.
Across the U.S., there are burial mounds, or at least their remnants, some as extensive in size as the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Cahokia and Monk's Mounds in Illinois and Missouri are two thought to have been built by pre-Columbian civilizations. Monk's Mound is just as tall with a 1,000-foot wide base. But what makes these and other mounds of their kind even more intriguing is what has been found buried inside of them. The Chickasaw Mound in Arkansas is another instance of the uncovering of a giant skeleton under similar circumstances. The ancient mound had its name taken from the chief of the Shawnee tribe, who was essentially known to be a giant with incredible strength. Chief Chickasaba lived in that area of Arkansas. And when the mound was uncovered, the skeleton of a massive human was found. Subsequently, other skeletons up to 10 feet tall were unearthed in the same area, all with similar burial artifacts found with them. Some reports claimed the length of the skeleton's legs to be 5 feet alone.
One of the fascinating aspects of this mystery is that there are megalithic sites that Hugh and my brother and I have visited all around the planet that have not only giant lore and mythology attached to them, but literal giant accounts. Like at Stonehenge, we've unearthed 9'4" account of a giant unearthed there, 14'10" if you can believe that. And then you get down to where Viracocha created the giants of Peru, and you have not only skull elongation at ancient sites like Pumapunku and Sacsayhuaman, you have these giant accounts of 8 foot and taller skeletons. In Malta and Sardinia, the temples of the giants are specifically noted in the historical record to have contained tombs of 8 and 9 foot skeletons over and over again. So megalithic sites and giants are interwoven in not only mythology, but in the historical record.
Jim and Bill's intensive investigation into burial grounds across America and the documented cases of giant skeletons being unearthed from within these structures led them to a startling discovery: that in their own backyard in New England was an ancient burial ground known as the Goshen Tunnel. Adding to the intrigue was the revelation of a secret chamber within the mound that may likely contain the skeleton of a giant. A mission was formulated to excavate the site and, if their theory was correct, unearth conclusive evidence that an ancient race of giants truly existed.
So right here in our backyard in Western Massachusetts, we have probably the greatest stone mystery in the United States, a location called the Goshen Mystery Tunnel. It was originally found about 200 years ago in the early 1800s by two boys who were hunting a rabbit, and the entire site was sodded over. And what it is it's a 20-foot massive stone shaft that goes off into two different tunnels, one 20 feet and the other over 100 feet in the other direction. And it might have gone further in the past, we don't know, but it's down about 20 feet below. So it was this massive construction that occurred right at the time of colonists showing up, if it was done by colonists. And we believe that it may be an ancient burial because it lines up with all these ancient tombs that were found in the area that are listed in Smithsonian ethnology reports. So our focus is to find this lost chamber that is associated as an offshoot from this main mystery tunnel.
That there's this thing called the Goshen Mystery Tunnel several miles from my house, and I'm a stonemason, and I'm looking into these stone structures and then find out about the Goshen Mystery Tunnel. It's better than money. I don't know how to put it. You know, it's the most fun thing that there is to do, in my opinion, is this historical detective work around a mystery like this. So it was a massive undertaking for no known reason. There's been speculation that, it might be some sort of aqueduct or well. It's dry. That it might be for the underground railroad, which is not feasible. The tunnel nobody would be down there for any length of time. There's a story about counterfeiters using it for some reason. It's again not feasible. So there's nothing in the town that talks about its construction. There's not Old Man Johnson was building it and he died or anything like that. So it's just a crazy, great story that we get to participate in. It's just, I feel so lucky.
Yeah, well, what got my attention when visiting the Goshen Tunnel was the fact that it's so well buried. I mean, it's we've been to many of these megalithic chambers all over New England. We've seen the interior of some of the mounds in the Ohio area where they appear to be stone construction, but this is quite unique. It's got the whole kind of almost like a well, like a stone well going down, this sort of cylindrical bit you drop down, and it goes through to these different areas, very, very long, almost going parallel to the ground level above it. I mean, so what's that all about? I mean, it's such an unusual construction, yet it's such high quality construction, and yet it was completely hidden. So to me, it does have a tomb-like quality about it. They're trying to hide it, making it very difficult to get into, to try and, if you want to steal anything from it, things like this. So the fact that there's a hidden chamber within that could be very important. It could be something really, really interesting still down there.
Hugh, my brother, and I investigated the site several years ago with a team from UMass. An archaeological dig was conducted there. And we concluded that through the evidence that it was built at least earlier than the late 1700s. We've done a number of tests, dug trenches, investigated the tunnel itself, went in 70 feet and found these strange zippers that are a poor construction technique, stonemasonry-wise, which is not indicated anywhere else in the structure. And what we believe it is hiding a side shaft.
So the enigma of the construction is the entire area here for hundreds of feet was dug down 15, 20 feet. 20 feet, the whole length of it. Massive 1 and 2 ton capstones were laid on the top after all the sides were built and backed up. And then it was covered over. And UMass determined that it was built before these fields were plowed.
Correct.
So it was built before this town was settled.
One of the things about the site is that it really lines up with these ancient stone tombs that were found in the eastern part of the country that were thoroughly documented as having enormous skeletons associated in a burial. 7 and 8 foot tall skeletons littered throughout the eastern states in stone tombs, documented by Smithsonian scientists. So we believe this fits into the category.
And one thing is that the Adena people, who were extremely tall, and the royal class elongated their skulls, the belief is that they may be part of the stone building natives that came all the way into New York State and Massachusetts. So that's another mystery that we're trying to uncover here. And the excavations in the 1980s by Jim Whittle and others were based on trying to find that. So we think there's a side shaft, which could be where the chamber is.
Right.
It seems like an enigmatic construction here where something is being hidden. There's no question about it. That's part of this. There's like something off to the side. So that's why we're here continuing.
The combination of the smoke test and the sand and the lintel, the stone being at the exact right height for a side shaft. There were so many things pointing to a possible side shaft in that tunnel right now that it's hard to imagine there's not.
What really caught our attention was how similar this construction is to so many of the mound building sites with these long passageways with capstones at the end with a massive burial in the Smithsonian records, 7, 8 foot tall. Even into New York State and other areas close to here, we have these stone tombs, found everywhere. So that's our thought, is this an ancient stone tomb, which would be pretty cool.
We recently got the green light from the owner to dig over our geoprobe hole. So we intend to do a dig right down over this, what we're hoping is a side shaft or a hidden chamber of this tunnel.
So I'm down at the base of the Goshen Mystery Tunnel. In this, right here, there is the tunnel goes out 100 feet, or it did go 100 feet in that direction. It's about 4 feet wide and about 3 feet high, 4 feet high. This is the
Nobody's in there. It goes about 20 feet to the north. It's dry laid, there's no mortar, and although it looks like a well, there's no water. So, just an incredible, massive construction for no known reason.
A lot of these ancient sites were built and organized by, say, diviners first, where there's magnetic anomalies, places like Machu Picchu, but it could be, some kind of metal in there. It could be a treasure in there. It's, artifacts. We really don't know. It seems to indicate that there's something metallic going on, whether it's natural or not. We hope to answer that.
So basically, yeah, there are two walls on either side, about 3 or 4 feet apart, and the walls are about 3 feet high, 4 feet high, and then big lintel stones that are about 5 feet wide at least, and they're about 4 feet, so they're like 5 by 4s, run the whole length on top of this structure down here.
As it stands, this is such a huge undertaking. 20 feet down had to be excavated, this massive construction with multi-ton stones laid deep down in the earth, then covered over again. It really smacks of some organized, huge project, and there just wasn't the population for that at the time it was purported to be built if it was colonial.
This is the north tunnel. It's a little skinnier.
Another strange aspect of the tunnel is right where we believe there's a side shaft, there is a strange magnetic anomaly. And this was verified by the safety guy who was there, who is a world traveler and is, understands all the equipment. And he was blown away that it was, the needle was moving 15, 20 degrees right over there. And he kept going back and forth and showing us. So it wasn't our wishful thinking, it was a seasoned professional telling us that there was a strange magnetic anomaly right on top of where we believe this chamber is.
The south tunnel plunges down 20 feet. Where I am, I'm probably 17 or something. It goes down and out, and I can disappear.
And you can go about 70 feet into there.
We use the quarry that's only a couple hundred yards from this site. So this stone is plentiful around here, but still you'd have to find all those pieces. I mean, there's hundreds of lintel stones in this construction.
And bring them all to the site.
You'd have to bring them to the site. We capped the tunnel entrance with plywood and pumped smoke into it. And the smoke traveled along the known tunnel, which is underneath me right now, and goes out in that direction. And this is where we think there's a side shaft. So the smoke had to travel from 12, 15 feet down over, and smoke came out of this geoprobe hole, which this sleeve goes all the way down and sits right on top of what we think is a capstone. And if there's not anything there, then that smoke had to travel through solid clay to get all the way over here and come up, which I just can't imagine doing.
There was also the drafty cold air and the chemical smell of the smoke coming through the pipe too.
Yeah.
So that would have made it all the way through the clay, which is really improbable, That's why we think there's another mysterious passageway here.
That there's some
hidden chamber.
Some hidden chamber or side passage to the Goshen Mystery Tunnel.
Many different points of evidence are all telling us that there's something down there.
The team continues to search for ancient monolithic sites in New England, including a location in Vermont they've never explored. One of the biggest stone chambers is called Calendar 2 in South Woodstock. Calendar 2 measures 10 feet by 20 feet on the inside, the same geometrical ratio as the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, and the door aligns with the solstice sunrise.
these.
These are huge. These go all the way across now.
Every one of them does. There's 7 of them. And they go deep in, like 14, 15 feet long.
This is amazing.
It's funny, I always thought that they'd be like schist or granite, but these are all
Salacious limestone.
salacious limestone, which around in New England, people prop these up in their yard and stuff because they're anthropomorphic. I have one in my garden. We call it the fish rock. And you would have to go hunting to find these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're kind of a rare thing. There's some big stones in there.
Look at this.
Look at this bottom one.
It's like strange carvings as well. This could be done later. And there is supposed to be, according to Barry Fell, some kind of runic
Ogum or something like that.
carvings in there somewhere. But what is modern and what is ancient is a big mystery.
It's new.
We've got stuff down here.
I should say that one's the biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah, that is huge. There's all the way across.
So, but even like, this is quite an engineering project. Like these stones.
Yeah. I imagine, looking at it, the way it's on the outside is you put the stones in, you start building up, and then you build yourself a ramp to get these big ones on as you build up. And then once you have all your walls done, you know, you can start with one lintel and then work over the top, dropping them down all the way across. But sourcing them is the problem. Is like they're so rare to find.
This long, right?
Yeah, this shape and this material. It's like, how do you source them?
Yeah, it's rare to get like 10 or 12 footers that you could put in something like this. So they probably got to bring them from a distance to make this.
Who could have done it?
Them.
So we also have these unusual features just to the side of the chamber. We have this large megalithic block in this kind of pit, which is clearly being carved out of the ground. And I would imagine there are stones all around the edge. There's the main chamber there. Over here is the most impressive one. If we look at this, you can clearly see, once you go down in here and have a look, you can actually see that this, not only does it have many stones in it, you can see the chamber there in the background, but look at this, all around here you've got big blocks just making up a wall of like an interior space, like that goes underground. And this goes all the way around. It's probably like 40, 50 feet wide, square. Can't get above it really though because of the trees with the drone or anything, but still worth noting here. And some of these stones are huge, absolutely massive. If you go over here, you see these ones here. And this was probably all completely covered up when this was first people came to live here in the early 1700s. Clearly, this is a very ancient megalithic complex, not just the Calendar 2, not just the chamber there, but actually the entire hilltop. It's like a hill fort. Massive megalithic block just there. Absolutely incredible. So this is, and then you get the walls going all the way around the edge, which are thought to be massive hexagons stretching across the landscape. Something about this place, it's really got this whole magical, very strange feel about it. No, there's certainly evidence of that, yeah, that there is, it's evidence of geomancy and massive surveying over the landscape, acoustics, and working with the natural energies. So these are all things relating to these sites, I believe, on a global scale. I believe, quite strongly, with all the legends associated with the giants, that they were involved in their construction. I think we have to take that seriously, because there's too many stories, there's too many accounts here and in England that talk about this. Because even in New England, as you know, Jim, you found a whole bunch of accounts here, and they're never too far from the chambers. They're not directly next to them, but they're close enough to warrant, at least speculate that they may have been built by giants.
an account in Vermont of a stone mound, a stone cairn that an over 7-foot skeleton was found, which is very interesting. Because
That's the right connection.
yeah, archaeologists don't even think that Native Americans built with stone at all in New England, but we have, like at Monument Mountain, the natives built a huge stone mound there, and Ezra Stiles, the president of Yale, went there and talked to the native chief and basically verified that it was of native construction. And they call Monument Mountain because of the stone monument that was once there. And it's actually the place that Melville met Thoreau. It's kind of interesting as well. But there is this lore of, stone construction and all around the hills here.
Woven into the stone mystery is the mystery of giant Native Americans and their legends of giants. And so it all around the world, giants and ancient stone sites are blended together, and it's no different in the United States. And that's another thing that compels me to investigate these things, the interwoven association between the two. Sometimes the idea of giants and stonework gets conflated, especially New England here. I think what's really going on is that there was a royal class of Native Americans who were extremely tall that the early explorers encountered and talked about, mixed with all the accounts of giant bones. So I don't want to, once again, conflate the case and say a giant built this. I think giants are part of the story of Native Americans and their construction and the reasons they built certain things like earthen mounds and stone structures. We're in Holly, Massachusetts, investigating a stone mystery in the form of a serpent wall.
It's a wall that meanders over a glacial erratic, and there's a very big head of a serpent perched on the end of this erratic. We thought it was a cool mystery. If it wasn't supposed to be here, what is it?
This right here is what we believe is a Native American serpent wall, built 20 feet in the air. These last 5 stones are placed together and joined, and they're over a ton apiece. And this is probably 2 tons, the one I'm standing on. And what grabs our attention is this serpent's head that was purposely put here at the end of the wall. And not only are there serpent walls around New England, all around the eastern half of the country, there are serpent walls known to be built by native civilizations and representative of the serpent cult that you find all around the world.
You know, after we found this wall and did more research, we speculated that perhaps the mound builder culture had some offshoot up here. And this wall is what got us started on all of our research into Native American stonework and then giants. So we ran into this, I don't know, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It has an eye that is in relief. You can see that somebody either found it and saw what we're seeing right now, or actually tuned it up a little bit, because this eye is in relief all the way around.
These are dangerous and huge stones to get up here, and it just rings true that it was built for a different purpose.
It meanders along the top of this ridge.
Yeah.
And so it's probably a couple football fields long. There's no question that there were 6 to 9 foot tall Native Americans in the population of the people that built this. And all around the hill towns, there have been giant skeletons found.
If you want to get mythological, the serpent cults, the serpent priests all around the world, the Veracoches, the beings who showed up after the flood were associated with the serpent iconography and indigenous wisdom. And they were portrayed as the tall ones. And you have that in native cultures in North and South America, but you have it in Samaria, in Europe, and all around the world, you know, Peru and South America. The feathered serpent, the wisdom keepers who taught advanced mathematics and things like that are associated with serpent cults and giant rulers. So make of it what you want, but they're all blended together, all these concepts.
Among scholars and archaeologists, there is a speculative theory about the true origins of the giant species. The Olmecs were the first major civilization in Mexico, whose massive carved heads spawned the hypothesis that some of the ancient gods were actually astronauts. Noted authors and experts have connected the ancient Sumerian and others with the Olmecs and extraterrestrials. The theory maintains that the space aliens came to our planet and helped shape ancient civilizations. These extraterrestrials had elongated heads and oriental facial features. Statues and other artifacts found at Sumerian sites indicate that some of the inhabitants in the area had elongated heads and coffee bean eyes. These relics are thought to give the impression of a reptilian presence and are today called by archaeologists serpent priest or lizard representations. Were they human or were they extraterrestrials?
Skull elongation is this strange activity where the child has their skull cradle boarded or bound, and it occurs all around the world, in Egypt and Peru, France, and the thought is that they're trying to emulate some ancient race of people. There's a lot of controversy around this subject and DNA testing of the Paracas Peru skulls, but that was occurring among many Native American tribes like the Choctaw and the Adena people. They elongated their skulls. Yeah, one of the prevalent ideas is that Homo sapiens were created by an alien race. It's clearly noted, it's shown on the reliefs in Egyptian temples, humans being created on a potter's wheel. You have these gods that showed up after the flood that are represented all around the world that created Homo sapiens, like in the Bible, from clay and genetic material. You have the giants being created by these gods. It is ubiquitous around the world, and the strange and specific nature of it really I find quite fascinating. Honestly, I gotta say that associated with polydactylism, 6 fingers and 6 toes, are these ancient beings that are portrayed as aquatic and androgynous, that show up after the flood and restart civilization. As strange as it may seem, you have Oannes in Sumeria, the fish god with the man bag. You have Fu Shi in China, who teaches the arts of civilization, advanced geometry, and the I Ching. You have the androgynous Viracocha in South America, who restarts civilization once again after the flood. The entire world is littered with androgynous creator gods who teach the arts of civilization. So that in itself is very odd. And I will say the Dogon people of Mali, Africa, have the Nomo as their creator gods, and they say they are from Sirius, that they are extraterrestrial aquatic beings who showed up. And you say, wow, that's just an outrageous tale, but all these different traditions, the specifically noted androgyny and amphibious nature of these is all around the world.
Jim and his team continue to study giants in America and worldwide. One aspect that surfaces is fake images and doctored photographs that appear on the internet. These fakes often turn away scientists who would study the mystery and often add to the noise that is prevalent in any scientific study.
Every day, it seems, there's some new, it's a Denisovan discovery, or in South Africa there's some discovery. We have all these accounts. When you lay them out, you talk about all the different ways that people try to debunk this story, and then we have newspaper clippings that debunk the debunkers, that they talk about this would be, they're just trying to sell newspapers. So many of these accounts, it's just like this tiny little blurb about yesterday in Youngstown, they dug up a 7-foot skeleton, and that's it. And it's on page 18. Why would you put that in there if it's not true? And it's easily found out. So, they talk about mastodon bones. Oh, these were all mastodon bones. These are burials. I just feel like with these 1,500 accounts, all the new information that's out there, that Occam's razor is with us now. And that this story is totally plausible. It doesn't have to be Jack and the Beanstalk and some 50-foot giant. These are just humans, a race of humans that might be 7 to 12 feet tall.
You have this interwoven narrative in ancient civilizations about giants and the gods and who was worshipped and who created us. You know, the giants were supposed to be creators, and they were also portrayed as being created by other gods that were androgynous, like Viracocha. And you have this all around the world, the same strange and specific and ubiquitous nature of these stories. It's not just myth and legend, it's oral tradition, it's secret society literature, it's religious documents, and historically verified information as well. All these ancient sites tell the same stories, whether it's an isolated Pacific island or Australia or the Middle East. So I can't get around that. You know, how can you conjure it up? You know, I believe in Jung's collective unconscious, but I also believe in a lost mother culture, in Atlantis, if you will, or a Lemuria, where all these traditions came from. And the great mystic Edgar Cayce, in fact, said that giants and little people were part of the civilization of Atlantis that sank in the middle of the Atlantic 13,000 years ago, and their peoples and culture were dispersed around the world, and that's why we have that ubiquitous nature found everywhere. There was a new AI simulation that was just run recently. A new study came out that there's another mystery ghost species that we know nothing about, and we only know it from its DNA fingerprint right now. So who knows what science is going to reveal in the future.
Jim, Hugh, and Bill continue to search for more evidence of giants in America and worldwide. For them, the case is solid, and there will be new discoveries that substantiate the existence of a culture of giant people that predate our knowledge of human existence. The study of the monolithic sites and the unveiling of more skeletal remains will eventually bring this study into mainstream academia.
Anthropology seems to be missing the mark in regards to human origins, that there seems to have been flood survivors in island nations in the Pacific and the Atlantic that were drowned 12 to 50,000 years ago, and their refugees were of different proportions. They're little people and giants are talked about existing in these lands with strange anatomic anomalies like 6 fingers and 6 toes. And you wonder, are we reading this backwards? Because a lot of these rare genetic conditions are interwoven in human genetics. Now, is this ancient interbreeding with different people that weren't Homo sapiens, with different beings? That's the question.